In this Lightroom and Photoshop tutorial, we are going to take this photo and we are going to turn it into this photo using just Lightroom and a little bit of Photoshop toward the end. My name is Matt Kloskowski. Welcome to the latest video. I love doing tutorials like this because you get to see the whole process happen from start to finish. And what I like even more is that from time to time, I do a call for images from people. So I don't just always use mine because everybody's got a different shooting style and genre. So I think it helps a lot to see other people's photos. So that's exactly what I did with this one. Let's go ahead and dive in. This photo was actually sent in to me by Jeremy and Jezza Denton, so big thank you to them. I actually used it in one of my courses. Quick roadmap, I would say overall a little bit of brightening. I think the photo is very well exposed, so there's nothing anybody could have done different in camera. I would just brighten some of the dark spots a little bit, maybe tone down just a little bit of some of these highlights. I don't think they're blown out. It doesn't mean we can't work with them. Maybe work with some of these bright spots in Photoshop, and I think just overall a little bit more color, maybe a little bit of glow. So we'll start off here. I think shadows will open up some of the really dark stuff, and highlights will tone down the bright stuff. You can go either way. Just remember, there's no right answer for this stuff. When you pull back on the highlights, you're going to pull back on all highlights, okay? And that might work for some photos. In this photo, I experimented with that, and I also experimented with going up to the masking tool, taking the brush option here, and then just brushing over the water. All right. And since I haven't chosen any settings yet to mask with it, since I haven't chosen any exposure settings, I'm going to see a red overlay. Had I chosen and moved an adjustment slider, I wouldn't see the red overlay, or once I do go move it, I won't see the red overlay. So a lot of people ask questions about that. Where'd the red overlay go? By the way, you can always turn it on and off here, but as soon as you move an adjustment, it's going to go away. So I could go ahead and I could just brush in on that area if I wanted to, but another option, which I actually like, would be to go and add a mask and add it in a luminance range, and then just go over here and just select that really bright area. And it's, to me, probably selecting a little bit too much, but let's just go pull the exposure back on that area. So that can do, and then you could always go over here and adjust the luminance range here. So you've got your fall off, you've got the actual range that gets adjusted with that smaller square, and then the fall off or the feather is going to be that other arrow that we have to work with here. All right, so this will just give me a little bit more of a fine-tuned way to get at some of those bright highlights without affecting anything else. As I said, there's no right answer for it. It's what's right for your photo at the time, and it could be any combination of them. But I'll go with that option here. While we have that, and remember that luminance range isn't selecting all of the water, but while we have that going on here, what I might do is create another new mask. I'm going to use the brush this time, and I will select all of the water like I did before. I probably just should have left that one active, but I will select all the water. It doesn't have to be perfect. You'll never see the difference here. And just paint over that. And then I'm going to go to my saturation and pull that back a little bit. And then maybe even add a little bit of blue temperature just to neutralize some of the brown areas in the water. We're not going to make them go away. I would never want to pull my saturation back so it's gray water. A little bit of color there is just fine, just to neutralize a little bit of that dark brownish color that we had there. Leave a little bit, but take a little bit away. All right, from there, I'm going to add one more new mask. I'm going to do it in the form of a radial gradient. We have a light source up here, so I'm going to go with it. I love enhancing light sources, so I'm just going to do a big, soft, feathered gradient, radial gradient at the top, make it brighter, and make it a little bit warmer, just to give us a little bit of warm glow coming in from the top there. It does tend to make those blown out areas between the trees look a little bit more bright, but we're going to take care of that as well in just a moment. But something right around there I think looks good. We'll close that one up. And from here, I'd probably just add a tiny bit of saturation. Now, I'm going to be really careful. I would probably want to push this and push the overall warmth of the photo a bit. But because I know what I'm about to do, I'm about to do a technique in Photoshop that's going to add a little bit of glow to this because I think it's got a nice fairy tale type of a scenery to it. I'm going to add a little bit of glow, and I know that technique is going to boost the colors as well. So if you know you're gonna do something later that boosts the colors, maybe hold back a little bit here, which is exactly what I'm gonna do. Because normally I'd probably adjust the whites and the blacks a bit, but again, I'd have to be careful in the blacks because that tends to boost the colors as well. So I'm not gonna go quite as far as I might wanna go here with anything color related, because I'd probably do some color related things to the reds and the greens here in the HSL, but again, I know that's coming. And then I'll head over here to my vignetting section and we'll add a nice little vignette just to darken some of the edges. Okay, so something right about there. Again, just kind of pulls your attention in from the edges toward the middle of the scene. All right, from here, let's go photo, edit in, and we will jump over to Photoshop. I can think of no better time for a quick 60-second word from our sponsor. So if you like what you see here, I actually have a very affordable course called No Light, No Problem. This one is actually an excerpt from the course in volume 3, but I have volume 1 and 2 that uses all different photos as well. The idea behind the course is not necessarily a beginner course. I'm not going to teach you Lightroom and Photoshop. It's more intermediate, where we'll show how to use the tools to take some of those photos that fell a little bit flat. Okay. Some people can keep going back and reshooting until they get the right situation, but a lot of people can't. And so I'm going to show you how to use a lot of the masking tools, a lot of the brushes, a lot of the gradients to spot the light that's there, and then to take that and enhance that to really create the photo that you had in mind, the photo that you envisioned while you were out there. So you can find all volume 1, volume 2, and volume 3. The newest one's volume 3, a little darker and moodier, but there's plenty of other options in 1 and 2 over in the link in the description. Let's get back to the tutorial. All right, now that we're in Photoshop, so we just jumped over from Lightroom, let's do a couple of things here. One would be, let's see if we can take away a little bit of this distracting area. I'm gonna go ahead and make another layer for this. I'm gonna make a blank layer. And sometimes I can use the clone stamp tool for this, just to clone some of these areas over. Sometimes the healing brush can come in handy as well. The only trick is you wanna put it in replace mode. And I find I get a little bit more of a randomized result when I use the healing brush. You still sample, just like the clone stamp brush. Option or Alt click to sample, and then you paint. But with the healing brush, there's a little bit of melding going on, where the clone stamp tool would be a pixel for pixel representation of what I clone from and to. All right? So I would sample, and then come over here, and then just paint over some of those bright spots. Okay? Now, that to me looks a little bit artificial. I think most people would probably never know, but I know it's there. A couple of little tricks that we can use. We can, number one, come over to opacity. We could try pull that down. Another thing we can do is double click on that layer thumbnail, and then we'd go over here to the blend if adjustments. And these blend if adjustments will allow us to kind of blend one area with another area. And so I'm going to go to the underlying layer. We're working on the layer that I healed on, but I'm going to go to the underlying layer. So what it's going to essentially do is look at the underlying layer and say, blend it away if it's got some dark areas. Blend away the layer that we're on if it's got some dark areas. We could do an hour tutorial on this stuff. So I'm going to go to underlying layer, and I'm actually going to hold down Option or Alt to split the difference there, and that'll just give me a nice little blend between. And then I'm going to go to the top one and hold down Option or Alt and split the white, because what that'll do is that'll let a little bit of white areas show through. We don't want it to be too dark up there, because I think, again, that would look a little artificial. I'm okay with a couple little white spots, but I think it was a big white spot to begin with. So just to show you, that's before we did our blend if, that's after. It just helps a couple of those branches weave their way and looks a little bit more natural. So we'll click OK. So I think that definitely helps. And then the last thing, let's add a little bit of glow here. I'm going to combine this all to one layer. We'll do that with Command, Option, Shift, and E on the Mac, or Control, Alt, Shift, E on the PC. So all three of your modifier keys and then the letter E. Press them all down at the same time. That gives me a duplicate layer. And from here, to add a little bit of a glow effect, we're just going to go to the filter menu. We're going to go down to Blur and choose Gaussian Blur. You're going to use, it's hard to, I can't give you a formula for this. So I can say around 1 to 2 times the megapixels of the photo. If it was a 21 megapixel camera, You know, 20 to 40 could be good. 30 usually right somewhere in the middle there. So whatever the megapixels of your camera was, 1.5-ish of that. Again, no rule to this. Don't make it so little blurry that you can see details. Don't make it so blurry that you can't see anything. All right, and experiment with it. That's part of the fun of it, guys. Again, there's no right answers for this stuff. Nobody has a governing body that says you must do this for a glow effect. So I've put a blur on the photo, and then all we have to do is go to our blend modes, and we change the blend mode either to overlay or soft light. All right, overlay is going to be a little bit more glowy, but more punchy. It's darker, you know, it's much more contrasty. Remember how I said it's what I was going to do later was going to enhance the color, and this does. So you got to be careful with that. Soft light's a little bit less punchy, but not as glowy. Right? So what I would do is probably choose overlay. And then there's a little trick that we used just a moment ago with the layer where we did some healing on. I could do the same thing here. Double click that layer. It's going to open up my blending options. And I'm going to go to this layer because this is the layer that I want to work on. This is the glow layer. And if I blend away the dark areas, you can see what starts to happen. It looks very harsh, but it brings back the original, the layer that's under it. But if I hold down Option or Alt, click on that little arrow there and separate the two, I can do it in a much more natural way and get rid of some of those dark areas. Okay, so I still leave a lot of the glow, I still leave a lot of the color, I like the glow on the water, but I get rid of the extreme darkness that was created by that blend mode of overlay. So we'll click OK there, and then the last thing, you probably will have to reduce your opacity. It's almost no way around reducing the opacity here. Somewhere, usually for me, is going to be between half, 50, 60% or so. But it just adds a nice little overall amount of color to the photo, a little bit of contrast, as long as you didn't add too much earlier, and a little bit of glow. It gives it a fairy tale look. If you're a photography purist, you're probably not going to like it, but everybody else in the world loves this effect. So I'd advise giving it a try because it can be fun to work with. Okay, from there, we are done inside of Photoshop. So all we have to do to get back to Lightroom is just go to File, Save. And when you flip back over to Lightroom, you'll have the new version, and it should pop up right next to your original version inside of your film strip down here. I actually had another copy because I practiced this before, but now we can go take a look at the original version here. So this is what we started with. I'm going to hit reset on that one just so you can see what we did. So that was the before and that's the after. And don't for 1 second think you can't come back to Lightroom with this edited photo and still do some edits. I wouldn't do the big exposure moves that we might have done in the beginning, shadows and highlights, but you can do small things. If you think the overall highlights might be a little bit bright, you can pull those back. You can use the masking tools like we did earlier if you want. But I always tell people that you can do Lightroom adjustments even after you've gone to Photoshop and back. It's not going to hurt the image in any way. So if you do your Photoshop edits and you think of something you wish you did in Lightroom, you don't have to start over again. Just do it. I generally do smaller adjustments, not big exposure, highlight, and shadow moves, but you can get plenty of things done inside of Lightroom even after you edit in Photoshop. Also, on a different topic than light, if you're into color, I've got another tutorial for you on Lightroom's hidden color tool. It's out there, but a lot of people don't see it. And so if you're looking for another video to watch, that's a great one to go check out next.